Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question today comes from William, and it is, what do you think about Capitao's crossbow? I got killed for the first time by it this week, and it was amazing how quickly it was able to take me out. Even when trying to escape the radius, it wasn't more than 3 seconds until I was dead. Do you think that the gadget is still well balanced? I will agree with you that this thing can hit incredibly hard, but I'm surprised at how many people are saying that it's overpowered. Now, I know that you don't outright say that it's overpowered, but it seems like you think that it's a little bit too good, and in my opinion, while it is very strong, I'm right there with you, it's very situational. A lot of things need to line up for you to do any damage against an enemy and to have this thing actually be viable. Because it doesn't have a very large radius to it, I mean, it does a lot of damage, but it doesn't have a very large radius, meaning that you pretty much need to put this at the enemy's feet or on their body if you're going to be able to take them out, or at least flush them out from their hiding spots. Not only do you need to know where the enemy is located, but they also need to be in a position where the crossbow is going to be effective. A lot of the times I might know that they're in a room, but because they're in the far end corner, I don't have a line of sight on that. The crossbow, of course, shoots straight. It can't bend around corners, and so I might know where they are, but they're in a spot where the crossbow is completely useless. And then on top of that, if you do know where they are, they're in a prime location for your crossbow to be effective, you then need to hope and pray that they don't peek around the corner or try and kill you while you're whipping out your crossbow. I've died numerous occasions where I thought I had a cheeky kill on someone, and then they just popped their head out when I was switching over to my crossbow to make that shot, and then they shot me directly in the face. That happens a lot as well. And so as long as all of those things are able to line up, yeah, sure, the crossbow is really awesome at taking people out, but that's a lot of variables that you have to consider. That's a lot of things that need to go your way, and it's just not as effective as a killing machine as I think some people are making it out to be. In my opinion, the crossbow really is aerial denial. If you're planting the objective or you want to ensure that the enemy isn't able to push through a doorway, then his gadgets are amazing. If you're trying to use this as a primary weapon though, that's where it's going to be a little bit more lackluster. The only way that I would be satisfied if they nerfed its damage is if they made the radius itself larger. So that way it doesn't do as much damage, but it also allows it to be more effective in more situations, making it so that you can flush out the enemy. When I originally saw this design and I originally saw that Capitao was going to be introduced into Rainbow Six Siege, I assumed that he was going to be one of the best operators at getting the enemy to move away from their fortified location. And while he is very good at that, don't get me wrong, Capitao is probably the best offensive operator at aerial denial. If they did give in to player feedback and they reduced the damage of his crossbow, I would hope that they would slightly increase the radius so that he was better at flushing out the enemy and fulfilling that role. Overall though, I do not think that Capitao's crossbow is overpowered in the slightest, and I would be very surprised if Ubisoft decided to make any changes to it. I could be wrong. In the next week or two, maybe I'll see the light and I'll realize that his crossbow is blatantly overpowered, but at least right now, it's a situational tool. It's very powerful in the right hands, but only in those select situations. The next question is, what do you think about the new mortar revealed for Battlefield 1? A lot of you guys know that I've never been much of a fan of mortars in the Battlefield franchise, with maybe the exception of Bad Company 2, because I just don't like the gameplay that's created by it. Dying out of nowhere, especially when you're doing really, really well, you're killing a bunch of the enemy, and all of a sudden a mortar just lands on your face and you instantly die to it, that's very frustrating. It makes it even more frustrating when that guy is a mile away in their deployment, in the safety of their deployment, behind enemy lines, and they're just getting these free kills, not really leaving themselves exposed. I don't like that conceptually. This is the reason why I despised the introduction of the UCAV in Battlefield 4 and even something like the mortars, because it's not interactive. Someone is a mile away, you can't even see them, and they're flinging this death machine in your area, and all you can really do and hope for is that you get lucky and you don't die from the explosion. That's not fun, it's not interactive, and it doesn't require any skill or any skill interaction. I know a lot of people are like, oh, really, he's gonna bring skill involved, but even if you're new to the game and you die to a UCAV, it's not satisfying, it's not fun, because there's literally nothing you can do about it. And so I'm really curious to see how DICE is gonna be balancing this out with Battlefield 1. What we already know is that it's not remote controlled like it is with Battlefield 4. This should be obvious because the technology wasn't available back then, and so if you want to use the mortars, you have to be sitting there with your gadget itself firing these things down range, and so maybe that's one way they're going to balance it out. What would be really cool is if they added in voice notifications to let you know when you're about to die to this gadget. All of a sudden, your soldier screams out, "Mortar incoming," that's going to give you a lot of options. You can look up to figure out where the mortar is so that you can duck behind cover, maybe jump into a building so that you're safe, or you can follow the vapor trail, realize where the enemy is mortaring from because they have to be on the mortar itself so that you can mosey on over and take out the vulnerable enemy. That would be really, really cool. But dying out of nowhere, having no indication whatsoever, is something that I just don't appreciate in any video game, and I'm hoping that they're going to be addressing this with Battlefield 1. This is the reason why I didn't mind the artillery system back in Bad Company 2, because you actually left yourself exposed when you were playing as the recon. You had to bring up your goggles, stay out in the open for a couple of seconds to pinpoint where you wanted to fire, and that gave the enemy plenty of opportunity to shoot you in the face. That's that interaction that I'm talking about. And while of course we can't have that dynamic in Battlefield 1, it would be nice if there was at least some way to interact with a person who was using the mortars. A voice command or voice callouts would be one way, but as I said, I'm really hoping that DICE has learned their lessons and they're gonna do something to have that type of interaction. The next question comes from Josh, and it is, you should only be able to play ranked in Rainbow Six Siege as long as you have a microphone on. It's gotta be the most annoying thing jumping in with randoms with no microphone. Well, I will agree with you that it can be really frustrating when literally no one in your team is communicating. I've had rounds where I've asked nicely, hey, where'd you die at? Where's the enemy? And then I'm greeted with silence, like my team was a bunch of crickets. Some of them will try to respond in chat, but not only does that take a while, and if things are popping off, it's not really gonna be all that helpful. And also, I don't wanna look down at chat to read it because the enemy might just kind of round the corner at that instant and then shoot me in the face. And so I would agree with you, in a perfect world, it would be amazing if everyone had a microphone and everyone communicated, but you have to remember, it's not a perfect world and not everyone has a microphone. If Ubisoft made this restriction, I can only imagine that ranked queue times would skyrocket. Like, they would go through the roof and you'd be waiting good 10 to 15 minutes to find a round because it just didn't, you wouldn't have as large of a player base. Everyone would be in casual because they don't want to use a microphone or they don't have access to one. Sure, you might have more communication with those games that you're able to find, but you're probably not playing as much Rainbow Six Siege because of those excessive queue times because of this restriction. And so my recommendation is find some friends, find some like-minded people that do want to use a microphone, and just play with them as often as you possibly can, because that's really the only way that this is going to happen. The next question is, do you think that Caveira should be able to go outside the building while she's using her ability, perhaps at the cost of it running out at a faster rate while she's doing so? I don't know if I'm on board with that. I realize it fits her kit because she needs to flank. She needs to catch the enemy by surprise, and there's some times where it's impossible to do that unless you're able to go outside and flank from a different angle. Like, I fully understand that, but I think that this would just be more frustrating to fight against and honestly kind of be blatantly overpowered. If you're able to extend that 2-second notification to like 3, 4, or 5 seconds like it was when the game first released, that would be a nightmare. You go out with your pistol in stealthy mode. You can only use your pistol in stealthy, so that seems at least well balanced. But then all of a sudden you switch it over to your SMG or your shotgun. You're right behind the enemy. They don't know you're there because they haven't been notified, and then she just ruins the enemy team. I just don't really like that idea. She's in a weird spot right now. I might make a video on her in the future because on the one hand, she's good when she's able to pull off one of her flanks. She's amazing when she's able to interrogate someone, but it just doesn't happen very often. I mean, I've been playing a lot of the Skull Rain DLC, and maybe it's just because people aren't comfortable with her right now, but even when I'm playing her as her or when I'm going against her, there's very, very few situations where I feel threatened by Caveira. She doesn't get her interrogation off as long as you're working as a team, as long as you're working as a cohesive unit, and so in general, she just seems more lackluster than anything else. If she's able to do it, she's amazing, but it just doesn't happen very often. I don't think that this is a buff that she needs, though. The next question comes from Daniel, and it is, this isn't related to Rainbow Six gameplay, but do you think that Ubisoft should make operator videos for the new DLC characters? I was right there with you when they released their first DLC and Frost and Buck didn't have their videos. I was like, what the hell is this, Ubisoft? You're cutting corners now. But then I realized it doesn't really matter, and this is probably money better spent on the developers to improve the game in the long term. Sure, it'd be nice to have these cool little videos, but I can only imagine that they cost a pretty penny. I mean, it's probably not inexpensive because I think they hire this out, and I would rather that money be spent on updating the game, bringing in more content for everyone else to enjoy. And so would you rather them spend the money on these videos that you may see once or twice and then be done with it, or would would you rather that money be spent on the development of the game and future projects? For me personally, I'd rather it be spent on the latter. I just think that it's better for the community. I think that's better for the longevity of the game and money better spent. But of course, that is just my opinion. And so I'm right there with you. It would be nice. I just don't see, and I think Ubisoft has even confirmed that it's probably never going to happen. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.